In my last video, I discussed reading and writing fill in the blanks, and in the comment of that video, some of you asked about fill in the blanks. So I thought that I would just do one video to tell you how fill in the blanks can also be done in an easy manner when you have enough concepts and tips and tricks. If you are interested, keep watching. If you are new to this channel, my name is Roman. I'm founder of Roman PT, and we provide online and face-to-face classes to people all over the world. I also upload one video every week about PT, usually covering the scoring of PT or different questions and tutorials. If you do not want to miss these videos, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. So let's get started about today's video. It's about fill in the blanks. An important but sometimes difficult question for some of us. How should we do these questions? That's what I'm going to show you. So right now I'm looking at some random questions from our website, and I'll help you to understand how I can answer these questions even if I have never seen them before or I have never done them before, by using certain concepts and logic. As an example, the first question here says music was as important to the ancient Egyptian as it is in our modern society. Although it is thought that music played a, and there is a gap. Now, played a role is a very common collocation. So even before looking at the option, I already have a guess that the answer perhaps is role, and I can see that here. So I'll just drag role here. This is my first assumption about this gap, and I didn't think too much about it. I just clicked on the word, dragged it, and placed it in the blank. Then I'm reading on. Throughout the history of Egypt, those that study the Egyptian writings have. Now, before looking at the option, again, I know I'm looking for a verb, and this verb is going to be in third form. How do I know that? Because of this, have. Has, have, had. These words come before verb 3 in perfect tense. It can be present perfect, it can be past perfect, and if it is will have or shall have, then can be future perfect as well. So now I'll only be focusing on found and discovered, because these are the only two words in past form. But I also know that discovered is a better choice because discovered is a more formal word compared to found. That's why I'm going to pick this. So you can see that in these two questions, I used two different set of skills. In the first one, I used the skill of collocation, whereas in the second one, I used my grammatical skill to guess the parts of a speech of the missing word, and with the help of that, I focused only in the options which could be the answer, and then picked one that was more appropriate for the given gap. The music seemed to become more important in what is called the pharaonic of their history. Now here I can look at the context and guess that they are talking about a time period, because this is of their history. History is a time period from the past. So that means I'm looking for a word that indicates that, and that's why I'll pick period from here. And for the fourth one, you can see this was the time when the Egyptian dynasties of the pharaohs were established, and music was found in many parts of everyday Egyptian. Everyday Egyptian, and again I have four options here. So I have enough time to look at all the four options and think which would be more appropriate. And I can see life would be the better option here, because everyday life is a collocation. So basically, while going through these four questions, I used four different types of skills here. I used collocations, I used grammar, I used contextual understanding, and again I used collocation. Which means if you know enough about the parts of speech of the missing word, if you know enough about collocations, these kind of questions can easily be answered. Now let's check if my answers are correct or not. And as you can see here, all my answers are correct. Now, is it just a coincidence, or I can do this for any question? Let's randomly select another question here. Let's say I want to do 18. You can see this is a longer paragraph compared to the previous one, but still I can apply the same concept and answer this question. So let's have a look. How can teens be so clever, accomplished, and responsible and reckless at the time? At the same time, even if I don't look at the option, I know that because it's a collocation at the same time, because I know we are comparing different set of skills which are happening at the same time. Easily, according to two physicians at easily according to two physicians at Children's Hospital, Boston and Harvard Medical School who have been the unique structure in chemistry. Who have been. So I can see this is a perfect continuous tense. So that is present perfect continuous tense. In present perfect continuous tense structure, after have and been, we need verb in ing form. And if I look for that verb, I can see there is only one. So you see how easily I'm focusing on the right kind of verb. But in order to do this, I first should be able to guess the parts of a speech of the missing word. Now the problem is there are so many grammatical rules, and perhaps you do not want to go through all of them, or perhaps you think that will be difficult. So what is the solution? That is what we have done in our online course. We have compiled the list of rules that are asked in your test so that you can only focus on them and get all the ideas in a short time. Then apply them while answering these questions. And if you feel confused, you can watch the videos which explain these things. Anyway, it is a paradoxical timer and there is a gap. What is the answer? Could be anything. When I look at this time, nothing is coming in my mind, so I'm not exactly sure what could be the answer. In the exam, what I usually do when I have this situation is I go to the next question. Now you might be wondering, why don't you just go to the option and start picking up the options? I don't want to do that. Whichever question takes more time, I want to do that question at the end because that question is comparatively difficult. And who knows, maybe the next question is easier than this. And by solving the easier question, not only I'm improving my score, I'm also reducing the number of options. So it will be easier for me if I have to guess at the end. Now the next thing I can see here is this produces signals that drive muscles to contract rhythmically in a way that produces running or walking depending on the pulses. Now, when I look at the option, I can see only signal and pattern are two words which are possible answers here. Now, signal or pulses would not make any sense here because pulse itself is a kind of signal produced by the rhythmic contraction of the blood vessels. Pattern sounds more logical here, pattern or pulses, because if you look carefully, it says this produces signals. That means signal is being produced that drive muscles to contract rhythmically in a way that produces running or walking depending on the pattern of pulses. So that makes more sense here. Not just that, in fact, if you look at the previous sentence, in animals, the movement is coordinated by a cluster of neurons in the spinal cord called the central pattern generator. And then they say this produces signals that drive muscles. That means these patterns produces signals that drive muscles to contract rhythmically in a way that produces running or walking depending on the pattern of pulses. Now, it perfectly correlates with the previous sentence as well. Now, some of us do not do this. We do not read more. But if you are a fast reader and you can read sentences more quickly, then it's always a better idea to read the whole paragraph rather than just looking at the sentence containing the gap. If you are a slow reader, then perhaps your options are a little limited, and in that case, you should start by looking at the sentence with the gap, and if that sentence is not enough, then only check the other sentences. Anyway, moving on to the next sentence. By the way, the answer here is pattern. A simple signal from the brain instructs the CPZ to switch between different, such as going from a standstill to walking. Because it says between different, I have two clues here. First, I know that it's the example of this word, whatever it is going from a standstill, one example, and walking is another example. Second, because it says different, I know it's a noun and it's plural because different means it has to be more than one. And if I look for such kind of nouns here, I see this is the only word which is a noun, which is plural as well, and going from a standstill is one mode, walking is another mode. So it makes perfect sense. So everything is fine. Now, I have answered 4 questions. One question is still remaining. So now I'll try to answer that question. In the exam, if you are still not sure, what I suggest you should do is look at all the options and try putting them in the gap one by one. And try to see which one of them makes more sense. You may find like one of the option makes more sense than the other. Now in the exam, when you are left with only one gap, it is comparatively easier for you. And one more thing is, in this particular example, you can see there are so many options left, but in the exam, you'll have fewer options. Here we give you more options so that you get more time to think about which one to pick. You do more mental exercise and be more prepared for the test. But for this particular question, let's see which one makes sense. In order to do this, try putting each option one by one in the gap. It's a paradoxical time of signal. No, time of signal does not make any sense. Now, in a similar manner, when I put height, structure, and likely, none of them make any sense there, because it cannot be time of height, time of structure, or time of likely. But if I look at erratic and development, I can see time of development is one that makes sense, because development is a continuous process and there can be a particular time in this process. Not just that, in fact, if I start reading from this part here, it says the teenage brain is not just an adult brain with fewer miles on it, says Francis A. Jensen, a professor of neurology. It's a paradoxical time of, so this professor is referring to teenage, which is a particular time of your life. And that's why it's a paradoxical time of development. Makes perfect sense, because he's trying to say that during this time, the brain is developing in a different manner. So anyway, so these questions you can see are a combination of grammatical skill, lexical skill, which means vocabulary, and logical skill. But more importantly, you need to focus on grammar. You have to look at the gap. You have to try at least to see what is missing and then look at the option. If you go to the option with a particular mindset, then it's more focused and you will not be wasting your time thinking about all the options. Remember, for this question, time and speed both are really important. So I try to help you to answer these questions by using certain tricks and tips which can be really valuable to learn. It's really important that you spend time honing these skills so that you become prepared for the exam. And it's also important that you do this under guidance of somebody who can explain these things well. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos in the future. I'm signing off for now. Until my next video, have a good time.